A call to order the March 3rd Heritage Preservation Commission meeting. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Davies?
Here.
Coleman?
Here.
Mueller?
Here.
Place?
Here.
Welvert?
Here.
And Chairperson St. John.
Here. Great, thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda for tonight?
Yes.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving us to item number 4, visitor presentation. Is there anyone in the room that would like to speak about something that's not on the agenda tonight? Great, so we'll move on to item 5, approving the previous HPC minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any changes, anything missing?
I'll move it.
Move to approve. Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. So the motion carries, approve the minutes. And that moves us on to the next action item. There's no consent agenda items tonight. Number 7 is, we have one item. So Liz, will you please get us started with number 7? Thank you.
All right. Thank you, members of the Heritage Preservation Commission. We have a site alteration permit request tonight for the Hammer Saloon, which is located on the Hammer's property. They're going through a redevelopment of the site for a new residential development out there that's known as Pinnacle. So if you hear about Pinnacle or Hammers, we're talking about the same site here. But specifically tonight, we have an applicant in who's requesting a site alteration permit to rehabilitate the Hammer Saloon that's on that property. So here's an aerial of kind of a zoomed in perspective of the Hammer's property. The Hammer Saloon or home is basically what's called out by the white arrow in this exhibit here. So this is the structure that we're looking at tonight for approval. So to give you a little refreshment on kind of the background of this site, it was back in September of 2018 that the city received a concept plan for the overall Hammers property, which is an 86-acre site. Pulte Homes was the developer and applicant for the concept plan that came in during September of 2018, and they were basically proposing a Del Webb community, which is a active older adult community, mainly for 55 and older adults to be able to live in this development. So it was in September of 2018 that concept plan was approved. It was also noted at that time that there is a local historic resource on the property, and it had to be looked at in terms of how it was going to be addressed with the overall development. So that's kind of what instigated the involvement of the HPC during that time, and you were able to look at the concept plan and kind of the initial plans for the Hammer Saloon at that time and start to delve into some options for that structure. So it's been about 2 years almost since those initial approvals. So they're finally at a point where they've submitted a preliminary plat application to us, which is about to go before our Planning Commission and City Council within the next few weeks. So getting back to the local historic resource that we're in here talking about, the Hammers Farmhouse / Saloon was built in 1873 per our historical society. It wasn't designated until 1996 when our city council basically provided a list of properties within the city that were deemed as important elements of the historic fabric of the city. So this was one of those resources that was called out during 1996 to be included on a local historic designation list for the city. And usually when they go through those designations, they kind of call out certain things that these structures are significant for. So for the Hammer Saloon, the pieces that were called out for significance was the fact that it provides significance to the local community's development and culture. It's a typical wood frame farmhouse that also operated as a wayside saloon in the community. So farmers would come there while they're traveling up and down the hill and use it basically as a stop, as a rest stop for themselves and their livestock. It also embodies the community's rural heritage. We only have a couple other rural farmsteads that have been able to be preserved within the community's fabric over the years, and those would include the Canaan House and the Jasper's Heller House, which were two other farmhouses that were successfully integrated into other development. So that was kind of a basis that we wanted to go off of when this new development came in. Is there an opportunity for this additional farmhouse to be a part of that development? And here's some older photographs for us to reference back to if we need to. The top one is when the saloon was operating within the structure, so it was an interior photo. And then the bottom photo is an old photo of the front of the home. So this is historically how we've known the home to be when it was first erected. And then to continue on the background, so it was in December of 2018, so a couple months after the concept plan was approved, that a site alteration permit request for demolition came in from the developer. And at that time, the HPC did review that and approve that site alteration permit request for demolition, which was subsequently amended in April of 2019 based on a new timeline that was taking place. But the SAP that you approved in December of 2018 was under the notions that are listed on this slide here. So it was under the finding that we still considered or the demolition was necessary for a major improvement that is of substantial benefit to the community. So that kind of ties in with the fact that this new residential development would be a huge benefit to the community given the type of demographic that they would be able to serve. But then based on the conditions that the demolition of the Hammer Saloon and home would not occur prior to June 1st of 2020. So initially when you approved the SAP, it was for June 1st of 2019. And then due to some of the work and prep that they had to go into preparing their overall preliminary submittal and EAW, they did decide to amend that deadline to June 1st of 2020, which ultimately was a benefit for the community or for the city and for the developer to try to work with anyone who was interested in trying to preserve the home. The other conditions that came with that was that Pulte Homes had to work in good faith to try to preserve the home as best as they can and try to find an interested buyer or investor to invest into the home. And then if they were to be able to come to an agreement, then Pulte Homes would create a legal lot within their proposed development to place the home on, and then be able to connect to the city utilities as well. And then with the agreement of this new interested investor, they would also have to get a site alteration permit in place before that June 1st, 2020 deadline. So that's kind of where we're at right now, is they're coming forward with that site alteration permit request. So they're staying in line with the agreement with the developer out there and kind of with the parameters of this SAP that we approved in 2018. And then again, if anything were to fall through with the agreement between the developer and the interested buyer investor, then they would be able to demolish the house if things were to not move forward before that June 1st, 2020 deadline. So again, we're at a point where we do have someone in place that actively wants to restore this home. So Kierstin Case is here, and she's the applicant tonight, who has provided interest in this development, and we're very happy that she's become involved with this project and being a partner with the city and trying to preserve this home. So she's working on rehabbing both the exterior and the interior. First phase of her work is mainly focused on the exterior to stay in line with her agreement with the developer. So that's why we're seeing a site alteration permit request tonight from her, mainly for the exterior work. And just to note, any of the interior work that she decides to do will not involve HPC approval. We don't typically approve SAPs within the interiors of historic properties. There's one exception within the city, and that's the Klein Mansion on 4th Street, which has a preservation ordinance within it, within the interior. But other than that, all other historic properties don't require SAPs for interior work. It's only for really what's happening on the outside. And then just to give you an understanding of how this home has changed over the years, or how it's been altered significantly. The front porch that you originally saw in the old photograph was an open front porch, but it has been enclosed. It's hard to say when that was done exactly. The saloon door that you saw on the front of the home here, this was the saloon door, has also been removed. The first floor openings, and when we say openings, we mean windows, have been consolidated from 2 to 1 opening that you'll see. I'll show it in a few. So these used to be 2 windows down here, and it was consolidated into 1. And then the types of windows have been updated to a more contemporary type window, which isn't uncommon in historic homes. And then the roof profile near the front porch was also altered. It used to have kind of more of a slanted type look or concave profile on it compared to kind of your more standard pitch roof here. And then on the second floor and on the rear, additions were added to the building as well. So it doesn't have its original footprint that we've seen in the original photograph. And we think that happened around the 50s time frame. So a lot has happened to the home over the years, and definitely does not have all of kind of its originalness that you see in the original photographs for this home. And here are some more current photos of the home. So as you can see, it's in pretty rough shape. The siding is chipping. The siding is also rotting in some places. The roof is old and getting to be in poor condition. So it needs a lot of TLC that Kierstin is happily able to provide for this home. So here's kind of a comparison photo of the older and the newer. Still has somewhat of its same structure and profile here, but some of the cosmetic work has definitely changed the overall building. I also wanted to include the plan for the overall Hammers property and how the Hammers Saloon lot basically fits into that. So the Hammers Saloon currently sits here today, and basically what the developer has done is include a separate lot, which is actually adjacent to the Crown of Glory site for this home to be located in. This will still provide access onto Cardinal Street, which is being realigned as a part of this new development plan out here, and that's due in part to the access that's proposed onto Highway 41. It requires a certain amount of distance between other streets. So the realignment of Cardinal Street was basically inevitable with that. But it was able, or the developer was able to show kind of how that realignment was able to kind of nestle around the proposed lot for the Hammer Saloon. And here's a more zoomed in perspective of that, showing how you access that. So an access point is shown on the Cardinal Street side. And here's a more simplified drawing of the overall lot. So what the applicant is requesting tonight again is the site alteration permit, and specifically renovating mainly the front facade, or the front facade of the home. There will be other parts of the home touched, which would involve re-siding the entire home. They will be replacing the siding on the home with white cementitious siding and a 5-inch reveal, which is consistent with the current reveal on the home. And it's also a very traditional reveal application on older homes, is having that 4 to 5 inch reveal is pretty typical of older residential properties. So they will be re-siding the entire home. They will also be replacing the entire roof for the property, or for the structure, and replacing all of the windows. And they will be replacing them with an Anderson brand aluminum clad window, which is a 6/6 grid. And when I say that, it's the amount of grid space that you see. So it's hard to see in this photo, but the original photograph showed a 6/6 grid on the original. You can kind of see it here. So it's basically 6 panels over 6 panels. So they're planning to utilize that same grid pattern on the new windows. And they'll be double hung as well, which is also consistent with what we see in the older photographs. And then lastly, they will be restoring the front porch. So they will be taking away the screened-in portion and opening it up. In addition to that, they will be adding decorative pillars and a decorative gingerbread, which is essentially kind of the adornment that you see on the tips of the eaves, or near the eaves. They've included some specs of what they're utilizing for their materials. Again, they're utilizing the white cementitious siding to stay traditional with kind of what people have known the house to be, which is white right now. And then as you can see the 6/6 grid window shown here. They'll be replacing the doors as well to have kind of more of that historic feel on the doors. And then they will provide some gooseneck lighting around some of the doors as well, which is a very traditional historic lighting application. And then this is kind of an example photo showing some decorative pillars here with some decorative gingerbread there. And then they provided a couple renderings of basically how they're bringing the front porch back into the overall structure, and then bringing in new windows and new window openings on that first level front facade here. All the other window openings will remain in their same location. The exception is on the front facade here, where they will be replacing the single window with 2 window openings, which from staff's perspective is the most logical and complementary approach for the building. We don't want them to add another saloon door back here. It's not functioning for the program of the home, and nor are they going to operate a saloon out of there either. So that would have been kind of a overarching request if we were to request something like that. So what they've landed on is something that is much more appropriate for the type of use that they're proposing for the home. So when we have site alteration permits come through, we have a set of standards that we use to review these requests, and these are coming from the Secretary of Interior standards that are set forth by the country. And I'm just going to touch on a few. I've included 7 of those in the overall report. Some of them are a little redundant in terms of the responses to them, so I just want to kind of touch on the important pieces of that. So Standard A, the historic and architectural significance of the resource and its relationship to the historical integrity of the surrounding area. So understanding again that this is a local historic resource. It housed a saloon that was of prominence in the community, and then also housed a prominent family name that had a long generation time lapse here in the city. So still being sensitive to that and understanding kind of the history that happened there is important. And then understanding kind of how its original character and pieces are being brought back to life as a part of this request. So that is something that they are proposing to do with most of the elements that you see in their plan. And then Standard B, the general compatibility of the architectural style, arrangement, texture, color, arrangement of color, and materials used on the existing and proposed structures with the character of the historic resource and its site or the historic district. So being able to understand kind of what materials and applications were used back in the time frame that these buildings were built. So looking at piece by piece of what they're proposing, the siding that they're bringing in is a cementitious siding. We've actually have used that to try to replicate kind of that wood type siding. It is a more contemporary application, but we've considered cementitious a qualitative wood mimicking type siding before. And they're also choosing a lap siding reveal of 5 inches to be consistent with the reveal on the current home. So that's of importance in trying to maintain with the new re-siding that they bring in on that. And then the windows that they're planning to bring in, again, are bringing in those qualities that you see in the original photo, which is that 6/6 grid, double hung windows. So they're being able to provide a more historical look with those type of windows that they're bringing in. And then being able to bring the front facade to a more historical and complementary orientation of the openings there is also a plus with what they're proposing. And then lastly, Standard D3, each property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Changes that create a false sense of historical development, such as adding conjectural features or elements from other historic properties will not be undertaken. So making sure that whatever they bring in is complementary and doesn't overpower the historical character of the home. So all of the elements that they are bringing into this home and the renovation are very complementary to the building and trying to basically be sensitive to the original character of it. So overall, we believe that the applicant has done a very good job of providing renovation changes that will complement and renew the historic character of this home. They're putting in every effort that they can to put in changes that'll bring it back to its original character. And just so that you're aware, the home has been vacant for several years, so having someone to be able to reinvest into this local resource is definitely a plus, and getting it back on the radar again is going to be a huge plus for the community. And then being able to incorporate it into the development, it will also have a pretty prominent viewscape as you're coming into the development. So the way that they're able to change it and make it a beacon once again is definitely a plus. So with that, we are asking you to make a motion tonight to approve the site alteration permit for the renovation of the Hammer Saloon at 1092 Cardinal Street. Based on the findings that are listed in your staff report, and then subject to the following conditions, which is numbers 1 through 7. This is also a public hearing, just want to make you aware. But we'll invite the applicant up to have her say anything additional that we haven't already covered, or if you have questions, I'm happy to answer any, or we'll have Kierstin answer questions as well before we open the public hearing. Does anyone have any questions for me? Otherwise,
Very well, very detailed communication, thank you.
yep.
See,
you're
a
welcome.
lot of work.
I do have on the recommendation, I think you should include the trim outs because they're important to the design of the house.
Okay,
The major trim around the windows is important, the corner board trim is important. There's wide trim underneath the roof overhangs.
okay,
And they've called it out in their proposal, but it's not in your
in the drawing.
recommendation.
Sure.
I think it should be there.
Sure.
It's important to the design of the house.
Okay. So that would be the window trim and the eave trim
And then the corners.
and the corner trim,
Corners.
okay.
And that's in the same hardy plank
Yes.
or fiber cement trim boards. They've called it out with the hardy plank fiber cement trim boards, 4 to 12 inches.
Okay. I'll make sure that's included.
Well, anything else? Kierstin, would you like to come up and state your name and your address for the record, please? And remember, this is a public hearing. We're opening it
We don't
up.
open it yet.
Oh,
We'll
until-
allow Kierstin to speak, and then you can open the public hearing.
Okay, I can't hear you, but.
We'll have Kierstin speak first, and then after we'll
Oh,
prompt
after.
the opening of the public hearing, so.
Welcome,
be very-
Kierstin.
Thank you.
Process
Welcome back.
oriented.
Thank you. I'm Kierstin Case. I'm at 1695 Bavaria Road here in Chaska. And I am very pleased to be here again. This has been a long road. I think it's about closing in on 18 months. And I'm pleased that you've stuck with me, Pulte's stuck with me, and I think we've got a good plan. So I appreciate all of your help and support. And if there are any questions, I'd love to answer, but definitely it's straightforward. We just really want it great again and used.
And one question is kind of miscellaneous. What's the timing of the work? Once it's all approved, how
Yep.
long do you see it
Pulte
taking?
has asked that I begin work by that June 1st deadline. So that's the good faith. It needs to begin by June 1st, or else they need to make plans, or their plans, alternate plans for it. Then I will have it exteriorly renovated by September 1st, when they begin their own groundbreaking. They're anticipating a lot of excited visitors to check out the site, and they want to make sure that this is not a deterrent. So the exterior needs to be complete to some level of satisfaction by September 1st. They're excluding for me things like landscaping, because they themselves will have a lot of grading and other issues to do that will impact my ability to do that.
Does
For my
that-
own purposes, I'd like the interior then to be complete soon after that for any viability of a business purpose.
You have 90 days to do the exterior.
May 1st is when we would like to begin.
5, okay. 120.
Confidence?
Okay.
I could smile and say sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pulte will be completing the purchase with the family as soon as their boxes are checked, and then I'm dependent on that. So as soon as that can occur, I can begin
Cool.
within a few weeks of the transfer of ownership, but I am dependent on their progress. And I assume they would be lenient. If their progress slips, so would mine, and that's all right.
That's cool.
Do you have further drawings to do or not? for
Do you
the
know,
exterior?
we can provide whatever you would need. The drawings themselves are less important on the exterior because we're not changing any of the footprint. The only change architecturally are those two windows. With the exception of that, there isn't much need because it's a refacement, it's a replacing and a refurbishment. if we were changing footprint, then 100% I would see that would be necessary. The interior, though, is a little bit different story, and we are still working on that between ourselves to decide what that interior footprint would be. And that's where I think the majority of those drawings and renderings have been focused.
Okay, no, I was wondering more for the city, if the city requires it for a permit, drawings of the exterior.
Definitely, if there's something necessary, we're at your disposal there. For our own purposes, it's not our focus. But you let us know what you need.
I did notice that the first floor plan didn't have a bathroom.
Not currently. It will. It sure will. The nice part about an abandoned house is that 100% of the systems need to be replaced. So it does give us some flexibility for that interior to remake it in a more amenable floor plan.
Open for questions, anyone in the commission? I was excited to see opening up the porch personally as I read through this, and yeah, that's gonna be nice.
I mean, it had to be done.
Yeah.
There was
yeah,
no
yeah,
real
that's to get it.
question there, even if you didn't require it.
Yeah, that's a good-
What's the purpose of the house after? I mean, maybe I'm coming in on something, I wasn't here last month, I apologize.
So
Do you have-
ideally, I would like to retain ownership, and Pulte would like me to retain ownership for a certain amount of time, actually. That has been requested, and it's something that I am also on board with. It is going to remain residential.
Okay.
My ideal, because there are going to be a planned 300 homes behind the property, and because I love history and I'd love to share it and show the community what can be done with such a property like this, I would like it to be a short-term rental situation, so in that Airbnb type mind.
Oh, okay.
Pulte has actually shown some excitement in marketing it as a guest house type feature for these 300 homes, because they are going to be on small footprint, less than 2,000 square feet, potentially with visiting family, that sort of thing. So they're tentatively interested in how this might go over
Okay.
with their population, and I would love it, again, from a sharing with the community perspective. Obviously, if that does not turn out to be a good business model, there is long-term rental, which it's as a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house, which is what it will be in the end. I think that's a desirable
Right.
situation that would be easy to make into a business situation, profitable for the investment I'm making.
Very good.
Are
Thank
there
you.
any approvals required for the city to make it a short-term rental? Is that
Well-
a risk or?
Not necessarily. We have a rental licensing program that you have to go through our fire department with.
Yeah.
So you just have to meet certain codes essentially to be able to get that rental license. So, I mean, if they're already putting in the work for the interior, hopefully that will satisfy all the needs that they require for the
That's
licensing.
neat.
Yeah,
A lot of
that's really cool.
possibilities. Think
Yeah.
of relo. I need a place to stay for 6 months before the house is ready. It might.
I'm tentatively cautious. I mean, I've done a lot of research with realtors, also just asking around as to what the market can sustain. And it may be something we just try out for a couple of years. And again, if it's something, I believe that in the end, it's going to be a desirable property. It's going to look good, it's going to be convenient to a certain demographic. And I'm just hopeful that I can have as much fun as I feel like I'm going to have with it.
What? Go ahead, Steve.
Is there enough of a yard there to develop, and are you doing that, or is Pulte doing that?
So it is, we always want more, right? It is a very small plot, and all I've been able to request, because they have let me know that this is not a charity, and they are being very generous with me, and I'm grateful. However, it is a very small lot. My only concern is I need room to also add on a garage or a parking location setback, but within that yard space. And so we have discussed, we do believe that there is room for that, but I would like it to fit in and look nice, et cetera. And so I've done the best I can with what they're willing to offer. I'm hopeful.
Yeah, the lot looks comparable to the other units that they're going to build, and those lots are really small.
Very small. For the population that's purchasing, the goal is a zero lot line. It is desired to have that minimal maintenance. I just want enough room for what a potential renter or even buyer 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road would be looking for in a home. I don't want to box us in without options. However, I don't have any say or pull.
Well, I assume they're going to do a landscape entrance sign and things fairly close to the house.
So actually, the drive up does sound quite, and I don't mean to jump ahead into Pulte's application, but it sounds quite dramatic. How that entry path is currently situated, there is a 4 to up to 10-foot drop. That's going to be a boulder wall. So on my south side, it will have a fence up top, but it's going to be quite set up from the community and from that drive-in. So it's going to look very regal, I think, on a hill, essentially, and on a boulder wall on two sides.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's going to be quite beautiful. So I know that it eats up some of the real estate, too.
What's your biggest risk, Kierstin, you think, in these dates? What is it?
Oh, let's see, probably making sure that a 140-year-old house doesn't have even more surprises than we think we'll find. I think that's going to be, every day will be something we didn't expect. Making sure that the community keeps track also. By the time I'm ready for business, they will not be. So staying afloat and really kind of coming up with that plan for those initial months and years is also something to think about. And then how to keep it for the long term. And this house and this community will be here for 50 years. So what does that house look like when my plan is finished with it? I need to make sure that somebody else in 20 years isn't standing here trying to save it.
Awesome. Awesome. Any further questions? Are we okay to open it up for a public meeting? And sorry about batting out of order
No,
there.
all right.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so it is 7:37. We open up to the public here and ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak about this. And if so, please give your name and address for the record. Hello?
Name is Bill Westby. I have lived in Chaska now for 50 years. And so in some cases, I'm still new here. But I'm just a block away from that house. And I just had some questions about how that house is going to be maintained. Apparently, it's going to be set up for habitation. Is that right? Sewer, water, and power, and city codes. Is that gonna be addressed? Right now, there is no sewer, water, or power.
There is not, and Pulte has been gracious enough to volunteer to bring them to the walls of the house. I do see on the application that you said the lot line, so I'm gonna double check my contract with Pulte, because I believe our agreement says they will bring it to the wall of the house.
Yep.
So it's going to have 100% all new utilities, obviously, because there are none currently.
If it's gonna be rented out, you've got other codes that you have to meet.
Yes, a
Yeah.
lot.
Yes. So I guess there's a lot more to be done there. But what about the building itself with the heavy equipment going up that, well, I can't see it now, but anyway, when the Cardinal Lane is redesigned and they're going to be going right up where the Hammer House is now, there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment going past that house. I imagine this is your contractor? Or?
Yes, it is.
Yes. He's already looked into that, I assume.
What risk are you suggesting with the heavy equipment?
For 269 homes being built on 82 acres, there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment that's going to be going onto that site.
Yes.
And they're not all going to be able to go from the Moore's site. They're going to be coming down Cardinal Lane, or they're going to be going up from County Road 41. So first of all, how is the heavy equipment going to get onto the site? That's the first question. And if they are going to be going on up through the new road that's going to be coming off of 41, they're going to be going pretty close to that house. Now,
Structural
the-
soundness, are you thinking?
that's right,
Okay.
the structural soundness of the house, the basement, or, well, there's another question. Does it have a basement?
It does. We have,
Son of a gun, it's got a basement.
got a basement, and it does need a
Who knew?
little bit of work.
Anyway,
What's the basement built out of?
Actually, it's a little bit cement block, a little bit stacked stone that has been cement enforced, and then
yeah,
some of it is brick. It will all be enforced though, tuck pointed and supported.
okay, well, the question would be, what's going to happen first? The heavy equipment or the reinforcing of the basement walls?
Well, that is a good point that I can talk to Pulte about because we go first.
Okay, because as I understand it, the property is going to be sold in April. If they're going to close in April. I wouldn't think Pulte is going to wait too long to bring in heavy equipment and start working his property. So that means April,
Their plan is June.
yeah. April would be a time when somebody's going to be going in there scratching around with a shovel and something a lot bigger. So what's going to be going by that house, I don't know. And for that matter, when is that road going to come off of 41? If it's not going to come off of 41 anytime soon, they're not going to be able to bring heavy equipment down Cardinal Lane. And they're not going to want to have it brought in through the Hammer, the old Slicky's property out here. So there's a few little minor questions here that have something to do with your house because of what could happen when they bring the heavy equipment in.
Well, I appreciate that thought actually because it's something to think about. Especially when we have the basement guys in.
The basement is very sound at this point.
Can you come up to the mic? They're not going to be able to hear you.
Just say,
I'm Nick Nelson, Nelson's Construction. We've had concrete people in and look at it. There's a little bit of scaling to the inside walls. We're gonna resurface that and make a nice finish on the inside. The walls themselves are very structurally sound. The northeast corner, what's the word I'm looking for? The bottom plate has deteriorated a little bit. Some water's gotten at it and it's sunk a little bit in that corner. Our very first thing when we get in there in April is to lift that corner back up and just straighten the floors in the house back out. We have no concerns over doing that. It's a simple bottle jack and some framing in the basement, lifted about the 2 inches that it's sunk, and it's back to where it needs to be. But the house is, it's a typical 1800s house. It's very structurally sound. The exterior's given away over time. It hasn't been maintained. It hasn't, the paint's been chipping. It looks like it's been 30 or 40 years since it's been painted. But it's an extremely sound house.
Okay, there's just going to be an awful lot of heavy equipment that's going to be going on, building the road and then building the 269 homes out there. There's an awful lot of earth that's going to be moved. And because it's not where it's going to wind up, it's not where they want it. And how much is going to be coming out and how much is going to be going in, and it's going to be going on either that road or down at the other end. There's only going to be 2 openings to that neighborhood.
I'm sensing a need for good insurance on my part because in no way do I need Pulte's work to affect my investment
Right.
and my lost
Yeah.
money.
well,
And
these are very good points, Bill. Thanks for bringing them. We're not zoning or the
Oh, I
planning
understand
commission,
that.
but, a good idea might be to go to Pulte and ask them these questions, say, how do we mitigate and make sure that that doesn't happen? Because they don't want to damage the property if that's even a risk. So I think these are great neighborly questions.
you need a timeline. Pulte
Yes.
should give you a timeline of when, first of all, when is the road going to go in? When are they going to start scratching the ground? And like that.
Well,
Because-
especially because I'm dependent on, if they're bringing my utilities, they need to be laying utilities. So some of our own concerns that I've had with Pulte is that they would like me to be complete in a timeline that isn't actually reasonable, because I can't do my utilities until they've actually put them in.
But if they're gonna lay your utilities, they'd have to already be putting theirs in.
Exactly. Which is
And
why
if
they're
they can't be
time.
doing that until they've got the ground where they want it to be for the homes they're gonna build.
Which may be that the sequencing works in my favor, because to your
think-
point, I need to wait until they've done a lot of this.
Sounds to me like somebody's a year off.
Well, the good part is, I need approval from you, and then
Yeah.
Pulte and I have an agreement that is separate from this commission, and I need to perhaps look at delaying my agreement with Pulte, so that
Well,
we can have a
what
lot of this done.
What you're dealing with here is, I understand what you're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with here, but if what Pulte's gonna do would wind up damaging the house, this is for nothing.
Right.
Potentially,
Yeah. this is
because it
all
would
for
be torn
nothing.
down anyway.
Yeah, it'd be coming down. Well, anyway,
Thank you for your concern.
I've seen it happen before.
Yeah,
Well,
there
if the
you go.
worst case scenario is it does come down, we're no worse off than where we were 18 months ago when that was their original application. Their application was approved
But
to
I
be
mean, this
torn down.
commission wants it preserved.
You
Yes,
bet.
you bet.
You
Well,
bet.
it might be that Pulte is gonna have to do some, mitigation. They may have to do something on an interim basis to protect the house while they're doing all this other stuff.
I think that might be a good recommendation coming from the committee, that they got to do that.
Yeah, I don't have any sway.
And you do have to consider weight limits, two weight limits on the roads, which don't come off till when typically?
Mid-April,
You know,
somewhere in there, depending, depends on the year and the thaw, but.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd
Very
stop
big
by.
points, Bill, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. 'Cause I have a question on the responsibilities of HPC versus planning versus zoning versus the relationship between Kierstin and Pulte. It sounds like, to me, I'm not a structural engineer, I'm a mechanical, but it sounds like maybe a conversation with Pulte saying, how do we assess the risk and protect and mitigate, as you said, Bill, that first ask them?
I will absolutely ask them. I will state that it doesn't mean much coming from me. It means a whole lot more if it seems as though the city is asking for something.
Yeah.
I've asked for a lot and I've been shut down for a lot. And I don't ever mean to be
I get it.
out of line, but I've been told they're doing me a big favor. And so at that point, if there was, I think they feel very green-lighted by the city, and so they have the power on their side to decline my requests.
Yeah. Elizabeth, any advice on where in the city a request like this is most appropriate?
It's definitely something we'd like to further evaluate probably in our pre-plat application with them, to be able to look at kind of the potential risks that might come around the construction activity around the home. To be able to provide any measures that they can put in place to really protect it during the construction period. So I think we definitely need to open a dialogue with the developer in terms of what are the best practices for something like that, to try to make sure any concerns are mitigated up front if we can. So we're going to rely heavily on kind of the experts who know how to address that, because unfortunately, we don't have that expertise to say what exactly we need to do in order to make sure the home is preserved during that activity happening
Not
out
being the
there.
expert, but our wish is that the home is protected through all
Right.
this process, but I don't know what authority we have here within
Yep, and
the government.
I mean, at this point, we just have to further encourage that, because that's
Yeah.
our goal here, is to preserve the home. So we'll do what we can during even the preliminary plat application to try to incorporate that important discussion into the dialogue.
Well, city engineering should be involved, shouldn't they?
Yep,
Because I would think the city's just it wants to protect roads also. when
Right.
You're talking about heavy equipment. Because any damage done to them has to be the contractor's responsibility.
I mean, we all better on construction sites and muddy trucks and whatnot going out. You really want that coming right on the 41.
Yeah.
Come on up, I can't hear you.
Sorry. What I was saying there is, I mean, with them doing the earth moving and whatnot, and if they're gonna be coming out on the 41, you don't really want all that mud brought out on the 41 right in that location. That's pretty high traffic area right there.
It's got to be
Yeah.
coordinated with the city, the
Yeah.
plan,
Right.
how they're going to work it.
One of the things that we look at with any new development coming in is our engineer takes a look at the construction traffic that happens through the existing development and through the proposed in terms of where the best access needs to be. Because we are going to be running into probably some different phases of where the construction traffic comes through because they do have to realign Cardinal Street and they do have to construct that access into Highway 41. And there is going to be a period of time where both of those accesses are going to be completely blocked off during the work. So it will be important that our engineer be able to provide an adequate route for construction traffic to come in and out of the development that is safe. But also now, hopefully we can figure out a way that it won't be a potential harm to the home as well. So we'll do the best that we can. It's not a typical thing that we look at on a day-to-day basis, but we have incorporated homes into other developments before, and I want to say this wouldn't be any different than that. And there should be certain measures that can be taken to make that happen efficiently.
I just want to mention one other thing on your last slide, Liz. Can you flip to that one? I just saw one thing that should get changed here. I don't know if it's important, the very last one. Vinyl windows, it's aluminum windows, number 7.
Right. Yeah,
So
you
it's
won't
well-
use, you
But
won't
vinyl
use
won't be
vinyl,
used.
you will use aluminum. Right.
Right,
that-
so we're
that's
not
it.
allowing vinyl windows to be
Yep.
used where you're doing the
Good.
Oh, well,
aluminum.
not.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay, thanks. Any more questions for Kierstin?
Then you'll close the public
Cool.
hearing.
Well, then with that, we'll close the public hearing at 7:51 PM. Thank you, Kierstin.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
All right, back to the commission for discussion. Any further discussion? I mean, I feel it was very well prepared. I don't know who did all the work, Elizabeth. I assume you did a lot of this, but the information was there for pre-reading. I don't have any
Kierstin,
further
too.
questions. Anyone
I'm
else?
willing to make the motion with that additional note on the trim.
Yeah, I got that written down. Would someone make a motion to approve the site alternation permit as Elizabeth recommended on the screen, but adding what Steve added about the trim outs of the window, eaves, and corners? Does that capture everything, Steve? And adding that on, does someone make a motion to approve that?
I will.
A second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? No? Great, the motion carries. It's approved. Congratulations. Awesome, yay.
It was very exciting.
Now, number 8 is any other discussion items by the commission? Anyone have anything on your mind here?
Going goals?
We have to look at which number that, probably, we had the goals and objectives that we worked on last time we met. I'm just gonna pull out the list here.
on the
Taking some notes.
It's on the back. Back page.
I wrote down,
Back.
Back page.
Flip.
Flip the whole thing. There you
yeah,
go.
but I'd written myself notes.
Oh, okay.
Because, yeah. so
Thank you.
It's on page 24 of 24 is a list. Elizabeth summarized what we talked about last time we met about goals for 2020. It looked consistent with my notes. We had talked about maybe updating the walking map. I didn't know if that was one we wanted to include on there. It was just
Yeah,
a
I mean,
side.
number 4 is kind of a holistic goal to try to look at different historical documents that we can potentially update, so, but if you want to call it out as a separate item, we can certainly do that.
Any opinion? If commission feel we're covered, or you want to call it out explicitly?
I think it's covered in the documents. You know, we can
Historical
always bring it
documents.
up, yeah.
I guess one question I would have would be, do you want to prioritize them?
That was my big one. is-
Otherwise, nothing may happen.
Yeah, one of my questions was going to be, okay, if we say, yep, this is it, we're going with it, what's our work plan?
Well, the other thing too is, with the two very first goals, depending on kind of how far we get within those goals, will kind of dictate maybe some of these documents, such as the walking tour map, to be updated as well. So we'll ultimately have to get there if we start working on basically the first two goals that we have.
Yep. Great. So you okay with that priority, 1 and 2?
Yes.
We jump into that. And number 3 happens just because it happens, correct?
Right.
I mean, the city's going to engage us as
Yep.
they need us to. Is there anything anyone wants to add to this list?
Well, I guess the question then is how do you get started on 1 and 2? What's the starting point?
I think probably having a work session, just delving through what we have so far, and maybe, if we have any initial ideas on how to approach these, I think would be the best plan of action, because these could very well transcend into other years. The amount of time that they do end up taking, and how much time we're able to put into it in the front end is gonna kind of dictate how long it'll take us. But I think starting with a work session,
Yeah.
just kind of going, piecing into the actual goal and going into how exactly we want to tackle it, I think is probably the best first approach. So I think unless we have any other site alteration applications coming in, we can, start to set up a work session
I love that
as our
idea.
next meeting.
And I found, you said this is Heritage Commission Training Manual. This was pretty awesome. Read through this, there's a lot of good data. And why the heck are we here? How does it fit into the big picture? So if there's pre-reading before a work session, you get, what do we have today, would be prepare ahead of time,
Yep.
would be very,
Yep.
very much requested.
Yeah, there's-
Absolutely.
I would imagine there's quite a few resources we need to look at in order to even get started on those.
Yeah.
Right. So we obviously want to include any information or documents before those actual work sessions to kind of give you a base to go off of. And I know in those first two, the Historical Society is going to be a huge help to us in terms of what information we're going to be able to find. And, they're an open resource for us at any time. So you don't even have to be prompted by me if you'd like to further investigate or find more information on historic properties in town.
Yeah, I personally need a baselining. Where are we today?
Yep.
What are we working on? So
Yep,
that'd be
and I
perfect.
can absolutely help with that, so.
Would you be able to use email, maybe propose a work session, a date or a couple to us to find a common time, and with the planning of getting us some information we can study before we go, so we're not
Yep.
all newbies?
Just given how this month is panning out so far with applications for planning commission, we may have to look at the following month. Yeah, so
April.
today's March, okay. Had to get my bearings here. So it probably wouldn't happen as soon as April. We could probably shoot for May to get a work session on the schedule and have some material for you to take a look at. Yeah, because I feel like 1 and 2, goals 1 and 2 can really meld together a little bit, at least on the front end of things. So we can be able to provide whatever documentation we have to kind of help steer that discussion initially. So I'll keep you guys apprised when we have an actual date nailed down for our work session.
Cool.
But let's tentatively plan for May, just given the busyness of this.
Yeah, the earlier we
next
can
few
lock
months.
it down for our calendars would be really
Yes.
appreciated. So do we have to do anything with this list? It's this list, it's here. Do we have to vote or?
Yeah, I didn't include that on your narrative, but I think it would be best to make a motion to accept the 2020 goals, if you guys are good with how they're laying out right now. So that would be my request for you
Cool.
guys to do.
Any second to approve these goals? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. It's official. Don't ask us how we're doing yet, Liz. Cool. So based on that, is there any other business anyone wants to discuss while we're here tonight?
Anything on the City Square West?
The only update I have is that they recently just signed a purchase agreement with the property owner of the strip mall over there. That has been a long time coming to kind of instigate the other things that are supposed to happen after that. So that's pretty big. That happened just in the last few months. So now we're really trying to figure out how we want to propose the site. And I think where we're at right now is we're going to put a RFQ out, which is a request for qualifications for developers who may be interested in wanting to develop the site. So I'm not sure the timing on that, but I think we've kind of slated out sometime this year. It could probably happen as soon as spring or summer this year to do the RFQ process, which then would start instigating everything else after that. But we want to get, the right organization involved with this project since it's very hefty and there's a lot of moving parts to it, so. That's what I got so far for that.
Elizabeth, is there any other business you have for us tonight?
Nope, it was just the goals tonight.
I'd like to make a motion to thank Commissioner Coleman for our Thank you. Very
You're
kind.
welcome, everyone.
Very much appreciated. And but based on that, at 8:02 PM here on the 3rd, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.